coach, nutritionist, author, a guy who cares, and we are going to share information that I believe 1000% is going to be very helpful for anyone who hears what I'm going to share with you. Now, if you know what insulin resistance is, let me know in the comments below. Let me know. Just type in, put in an I for insulin. If you really understand what insulin is, then put in an I and say, yep, I know what it is. I know how it works. I know why it's important and why it would matter to anyone who is concerned about their health. Um, if you don't know what it is, then let me know that too. Hey, Robert, I have no idea what insulin is. I think it has something to do with sugar. I mean, I don't know. If you have a question about insulin, if you have heard people talk about insulin, there are companies now that are framing all of their marketing around speaking to this probably and arguably the number one reason why people are struggling with losing weight. The number one reason, we're talking causation here, why people are walking around with migraines. The number one reason why people have hypertension. The number one reason why people are finding themselves with fatty liver. The number one reason why they can't seem to tackle or get control of their cholesterol levels. The number one reason uh, that many people are gaining weight and are having a very difficult time losing the weight, even though they're looking at the calories, right? They're saying, well, I'm eating little, I'm not eating much. I don't understand why this weight is not coming off, right? And the reality is this: calories do count, they do, but counting calories is pointless. And when you understand what insulin resistance is, it opens up a whole new opportunity for you to live a totally different life. So if you want to better understand insulin resistance, and if it resonates with you, and you are serious and you want to improve your health, you want to reverse insulin resistance, which you can. I can put you on the phone with a whole bunch of people that we've done this with. There is no guessing. Okay, this is something that we do and we do very well, and we know it well, and that's what my documentary is about. It touches on all of the pros and cons that deal with insulin and insulin resistance, and then it gives people back the power. Because most doctors, as I'm going to share with you in this short segment today, most doctors do not know how to treat it. Most doctors aren't even looking for it. And that is the truth. So as I share this information with you, feel free to go out there and ask your doctor and look at them when you ask the question, because they're not going to have the answer. And if you pay close attention to what I'm going to share today, and I want to encourage you to take notes, um, it will put you in a position of power. And you can go and look it up, and you can go to PubMed and you can do some additional research, and you will come to the conclusion that everything that I'm sharing with you is accurate, it is real. And when you are ready to reverse it and improve your overall health by reversing insulin resistance, then we look forward to helping you out. All righty. So before I dive into sharing with you like what insulin resistance is, what is glucose intolerance, because we need to make sure we have clarity there. What is a hormone? Like, what exactly is a hormone? Because insulin is a hormone, which I'll go into. And what's the opposite of insulin resistance, which is insulin sensitivity? And why is it that 88% of adults that live in North America are metabolically unhealthy? That is alarming. That is a real stat. That is as real as it gets. And no one's talking about it. No one's providing real clarity on what it is and why it works and what you can do about it. Well, that's going to change. And for those of you who have known me for well over 20 years of working in this game and helping people not only lose weight but improve overall health, someone who has done 2 clinically evidence-based studies that have worked out to be extremely successful. Uh, we have the background, we have the clarity, the knowledge, the skill set to not only share with you clarity around this, but also put you in a position where you can be successful. Now, I want to talk to you real quick before we go into the details of it. I want to inspire you. And if you have questions, by the way, please post in the comments and I'll do the best I can to answer them. If I don't answer, then we have other coaches that work with me. They may go through and be able to answer your questions. But post your questions so that you have clarity, because this is a very important concern, and it's something that has created havoc in the lives of many. Now, last year on February 1st of 2021, I made available this program called ICORA. And ICORA is a coaching program where you can work with a coach who is trained, skilled, knowledgeable, has the expertise to reverse insulin resistance. Okay. So when you're ready, that's why you go to that site, and then we get you on board. Well, on February 1st, I had a client reach out to me, someone who has known of my work over the years, and they saw that we were making this program available. At the time, we initially called it VIP 456 Plus. And this person decided to reach out to me, and she came on board, and she liked what I was talking about because insulin resistance is real. And when I started working with her, her name is Betsy. Big shout out to you, Betsy. I'm so proud of you. Her fasting glucose, if this makes sense to you, you'll totally love how this works out. But her fasting glucose was upward to 300. And on average, we were looking at about 278. She had a hemoglobin A1C of 14.5. Okay, hear me clearly on this. A hemoglobin A1C of 14.5. So she is full-blown type 2 diabetic. She is insulin resistant. So if you have type 2 diabetes, just so you know, you have insulin resistance. They're one and the same. Now, you could be insulin resistant without having type 2 diabetes, but if you are confirmed type 2 diabetic, then you 100% are insulin resistant. Okay, that's just one of many signs, which I'm going to be sharing some of that with you. Well, her hemoglobin was 14.5. Yesterday, we got her lab work back. It hasn't even been a full year. And not only has she dropped a significant amount of weight, right, which the doctor was very impressed with when he saw her walk into the office, close to 30 pounds. More importantly, she's down in her waist size 10 inches. And her hemoglobin A1C is now at 6.4, which falls into the pre-diabetic. So based on science and the lab work, she's no longer full-blown type 2 diabetes. And because of the work that we have done with her, we knew that she was very high level of insulin resistance. And now she's down to a very low level of insulin resistance. And she's about to move into what we call insulin sensitivity. That's what we did. Her fasting glucose is getting very close to being in the normal range. And all signs are there that inside of the next 3 to 6 months max, she will no longer be pre-diabetic at all. She won't even have any signs of it. And we have completely, fully reversed her type 2 diabetes. Now, that is to be applauded. That is impressive. I am so thankful. And you know what? I get to see this on an ongoing, regular basis. And working with clients who are easy to work with, then it makes it so much easier for us to help them be successful. So now, let's take a look and let's answer a couple basic questions. Number one, and I want you to stay with me on this, okay? Number one, what is insulin? If you know what insulin is, do me a favor and please type it in the comments. And as you guys are doing that, also make sure you like, subscribe, visit our YouTube channel if you're catching this on Facebook or somewhere else, because your support in helping us share information that we share makes it possible for our channel to grow and us to be able to reach more people. But what is insulin? So do me a favor. I want you to take a stab at it. Okay. This is all important stuff, you guys. All important stuff. Like, what is it? If someone was sitting next to you on a plane and they said, hey, do you know what insulin is? What would you say? How would you respond? Okay. How would you respond? What is insulin? What is it? Like, what is insulin? Well, insulin is a hormone. And thank you, Janet, for chiming in there. It is a hormone. Now, most people don't know what the hell a hormone is, right? So a hormone or hormones, they're chemical messengers, right, that travel throughout the body and they coordinate. They're communicating, okay? They coordinate complex processes like growth, your metabolism, fertility. They influence a big part of the function of your immune system, and they even can alter one's behavior. Now, before we're even born, hormones, they guide the development of brain and reproductive of the brain and our reproductive system. Hormones, just think of them as messengers. So insulin is a hormone, and it's a anabolic hormone because, and when I say anabolic, okay, when I say anabolic, we're talking about something for growth. So take a look at this slide, for instance. You see the young lady, the young child there to the left, that was before insulin. See, if you don't have insulin, your body starts to melt from the inside. So we need insulin to live. And when you have insulin, because it's an anabolic hormone messenger, it stimulates and puts you in a position for growth. So insulin is a hormone that's anabolic, and it's a very important hormone. It's not a negative hormone, but oftentimes we will refer to it as a fat storing hormone because it does help regulate the metabolism as it pertains to carbohydrates, fats, and protein by promoting the absorption of glucose, which is sugar, from the blood, putting it inside of your liver, putting it inside of your fat cells, putting it inside your skeletal muscle cells. So insulin is a positive thing. Okay, we are happy and thankful to have insulin. And when you're a type 1 diabetic, meaning your body doesn't produce insulin, that's why they inject insulin. And without insulin, you can lose a lot of weight and your body begins to cannibalize itself, which is not good, and you can die. So insulin is a storage, positive, uplifting hormone. Okay, so now we know that insulin is a hormone. We know that a hormone is a messenger. And oftentimes, when I look at the response that I get from people when they talk about insulin, they confuse it with glucose. Glucose is sugar and is usually referred to as sugar in your blood. Okay. And there's this thing called glucose intolerance that you'll hear a lot about. And that's a term that's used to describe metabolic conditions that result in higher than normal blood sugar. And that's why it starts to get a little confusing because people are starting to go, they go, okay, insulin, is that sugar? How does that connect? Look, insulin takes the sugar that's floating around and they can put it in cells. Without insulin, that sugar can just keep floating around and it can corrode your arteries. And that is not a good thing. So once we know or have a better understanding of what insulin is, and now we want to understand like how it works. Why is it important? Well, number one, insulin resistance is 100% associated with the causation of obesity, aging. Insulin resistance can be influenced by things like medications. The outcome can be type 2 diabetes. It could be fatty liver, atherosclerosis. It could be hypertension. There's people walking around with headaches and their doctor is not looking at insulin as the driver for why they have these migraines, but it's insulin that is the driver. And we have to do ongoing conversations about this because it can really get a person frustrated when you start to realize how critical the role of insulin and insulin resistance is in driving a lot of health concerns, but yet no one's testing for it, right? Because when you go to your doctor, they are not testing for insulin resistance. They're not even looking at your fasting insulin levels. They're only looking at your glucose, your sugar levels, and they're talking about that. You could have perfect sugar levels, but have a negative side of insulin taking place called hyperinsulinemia. That means chronic elevated levels of insulin that is creating all these problems. And then one day your glucose levels could go up. So hear me clear on this. You could have perfect glucose, but still be insulin resistant. So what is insulin resistant? Okay, let's talk about it. And you can write this down and then you'll know exactly what it is, because insulin resistance is twofold. The first part of insulin resistance is when your cells are not responding efficiently to insulin. So the cells, right? So when, all right, for instance, so when cells in your muscles, your fat, your liver, when they don't respond to insulin, and they and can't efficiently use the glucose from your blood for energy, that's insulin resistance. And to make up for this growing problem that's taking place inside of your body, your pancreas ends up making more insulin to get the job done. So it's forcing something to happen that would be helpful to you, because you can't just walk around and let glucose just build up and build up and build up and build up and float around in your blood without doing anything about it. We have to get it out of there. And that's when your body just has to go overtime, and it starts producing more and more and more. And unfortunately, it's insulin begets more insulin resistance, and it's just a cycle that is hard to get off of. And that's why when people are supplementing with insulin, losing weight can be very, very, very tough. And I have clients who are going through this and go through it, and it takes time, but each and every time, I can honestly and openly share with you that we're able to get positive outcomes as a result of working with those clients. Okay. So the first side of insulin resistance is when the cells are not responding efficiently to insulin. And the second part of this is when you have elevated levels of insulin, aka hyperinsulinemia. Simply put, insulin resistance is when insulin is not working properly and you have too much of it floating around. When insulin is not working properly and you have too much of it floating around. Now, some people will play games and they will get a little bit of this information and they'll just think they can figure it out on their own. I hope you can, but the majority of the time it can't. So I encourage people to be humble. That's why getting a coach, I wouldn't put this out there and talk about it and bring clarity to it without being in a position where we can help you. It's just a matter of you saying, I want to be helped. Okay, so we know that insulin resistance is big. We know that it's impacting the majority of adults. Most of them have absolutely no idea this is taking place. So what would be the flip of it then? Like if we know what the negative is, like how do I get to that one that's referred to as insulin sensitivity? And what is that? Well, insulin sensitivity, which you don't hear people talk about, because that's when everything is working. It refers to how sensitive your body cells are in response to insulin. High insulin sensitivity allows your cells, right, of your body to use blood glucose more effectively, and you don't have any challenges with your fasting glucose. You don't have any challenges. You probably don't have migraines, and everything seems to be working really well for you. If you don't address the insulin resistant part of this, then you will fall prey to almost anything, because again, your doctor, your holistic doctor, most of these people are not looking at how to diagnose it. They're not. They're not looking at it at all. They have no idea that stress is one of the key causes for why a person becomes insulin resistant, right? You have these hormones as a result of stress called cortisol and epinephrine, adrenaline, and that plays a big role in whether or not a person becomes insulin resistant. You have inflammation, a word that's thrown around and people talk about it a lot, but inflammation could be caused by your environment. It could also play a huge role in increasing that level of insulin resistance because of the association between refined seed oils, right, that make fat cells grow and increase inflammation. And then you have the way we eat. Because, I mean, I can give you some words of encouragement as far as dealing with stress. We can give you some words of encouragement for things you can do for inflammation. But the one thing that we all can contribute toward reversing our insulin resistance or worsening it is based on what we eat and the composition of the foods that we're consuming at a time. Okay? The composition of the foods. So I'm going to show you something. Okay? And this is interesting. Okay? Check this out. Check this out. Now, for those of you who I work with, or you understand the Diet Free Life methodology, if you look over here to the top, we see that triangle. It says burn fewer calories. When your insulin levels are elevated based on the way you eat, right? You burn fewer calories. So your energy expenditure is hindered based on how much insulin is being elevated. That's why weight loss can't just be about calories. Now, do they count? Yeah, but counting them is pointless, because if the composition of the foods you're eating are not in alignment where we can maximize how many calories you're burning, then what's the point? Because your body is only going to burn what is going to burn, which a big part of that is dictated by these hormones. One, as we're talking about, is called insulin. We also know that you can burn more calories and you can have your energy expenditure elevated when your insulin levels are low. So if your insulin levels are high, and even though you may be eating fewer calories, you're burning fewer. You see what I mean? So the composition of the food and how the food plays a huge role in how our body is responding puts us in a position where we can win, or it puts us in a position where we won't win. And I know you want to win. So when you look at insulin resistance, right, keep in mind inflammation plays a huge role in whether or not you're going to experience it. Stress plays a huge role. And hyperinsulinemia plays a huge role, which you are in control of if you know how to eat in a way. And the good news is that you can reverse insulin resistance, as I mentioned earlier. So Betsy is someone who had high level of insulin resistance. And here we are 11 months later, as you see me post and share things on social media and talk about getting people healthier and getting their gut healthier. Here's a woman who, right in front of her husband's eyes, right in front of her community, she went from being insulin resistant to being insulin sensitive. If she can do it, and there's a whole bunch of other people I could share with you that have done it, you can do it. It's a matter of saying, I am going to be consistent. I am going to see this through. I am going to keep myself motivated. I am going to accelerate my inspirational levels. I am going to see this through. And when you make that kind of commitment, it will work out. But if I was coaching you and 1 week you disappear, then I don't see you for a month, and we can't find that way of being consistent, then the outcomes aren't going to be what we both want it to be. And we both want it to be good. So before I give you like a take home, and I'll be done here shortly, very shortly, let's talk about how do you know? What are some of the signs that you may have insulin resistance? Well, number one, 88% of people that live in North America are not metabolically healthy. Let's just acknowledge that right now. That's almost everybody. That's almost everybody. And as you hear things about like comorbidities, right, that means you have two or more underlying conditions. Well, those people are insulin resistant. So if you have excess body fat, which we know that over 70% of people that live in America are overweight. We know that over 40% of adults, that's ages 20 and older, are considered obese, or what we refer to as having excess body fat. If you have a waist circumference and you're a woman of 35 or more inches, and for a man 40 or more inches, that is an underlying condition. that is a sign that you have insulin resistance. If you have a fasting blood glucose level, okay, blood sugar of at least 100 milligrams per deciliter, then that's a sign that you have insulin resistance. Or let's say you have good fasting glucose, but you take some type of medication. If you're taking a medication for anything, like cholesterol, triglycerides, your blood sugar, then that medication is a sign, whether you have normal levels or not, that you have insulin resistance, right? So if your triglycerides are at least 150 or higher, that's a sign of insulin resistance. If your HDL, your healthy cholesterol, is below 50, that's a sign of insulin resistance. If you have skin tags or dark patches, skin around your armpits, middle of your back, around your neck, that is a sign of insulin resistance. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we could talk about, because you can start looking at your family history. We can start looking at your age. We can start looking at if you have hormonal disorders like Cushing syndrome, if you're taking medications like steroids, if you have sleep apnea or you're having a really tough time getting sleep. All of those are signs that you have insulin resistance. Now, here's the good news. The good news is that you can reverse it. You can reverse it. Yay! I mean, if I could play someone clapping, I would play someone clapping. If I had that type of audio, I would play it right now, because you can, and it can be affordable, and you can do it without avoiding carbohydrates. That means you can eat carbs. Stay humble, be humble. Now, there's a lot of people who are losing weight, and on the outside, they're looking good. But the insulin resistance is not going anywhere. There are many people that are living their life with elevated levels of insulin, and they don't even know it. No one's telling them to look at it, because when they go to the doctor is only looking at their glucose. Then they look at some of the other symptoms, right? Cholesterol levels, triglyceride levels, and most people don't even understand their numbers. And that's what happened just the other day with Betsy, as I was sharing. She goes in and has these amazing numbers, loses all this weight, goes from a hemoglobin of over 14% to pre-diabetic, and they acknowledge it. But then the doctor starts looking at her LDLs and says that because she's diabetic, well, guess what? She ain't diabetic no more. What do you mean? She was. You just acknowledged the fact that she's no longer type 2 diabetic, but yet you're looking at her LDLs and you're saying, well, we need to have that even lower. No, that's because you want to keep her coming in so that you get that doctor visit, and that helps go to your bottom line. The reality is, I would have thought this doctor would have said, hey, when can you talk to my patients? When can you share with them what you have done in the last year, and to put you in a position of where you're thriving with your health, instead of like trying to be nitpicky. But as I shared with her, I said, hey, I would go in, I would listen to what she has to say. Just listen to her, and then kind of just go back to like what you have done. Let's look at what I have done without medication. Without medication. Without medication. Jeez. This drives me absolutely crazy, you guys. All of this can be improved. What's up there, Dee Dee? Dee Dee did it. She reversed it. I believe Dee Dee dropped 100 pounds. She took the bull by the horns, just like Betsy. And I remember with Betsy, I said, Betsy, are you sure? She goes, I am not taking this medication. I am not taking this medication, Robert. What do we got to do? So she was a client that was extremely able and was extremely willing. And what we mean by that, like when we're coaching someone, we're always looking at, okay, what are they able to do? And once you have an idea of what they're able to do, then you have to ask the question, what are you willing to do? And even when I'm coaching someone and I put it out there like that, it's a great place to have a conversation. because we know there's no reason to go after something and you're not willing to do that. So once you're okay with what you're willing to do, then we create a plan around that. Isn't that great? And that's the way it works. So your doctor is not looking at your insulin levels. They're not. So who needs to take responsibility for all this? We do, as human beings. Each one of us. We do. So at the end of the day, what can we do? We can take care of ourselves. Remember, there's things like inflammation and there's stress, and it's up in the air on how much we can really do to improve that. But because you're going to eat today, hopefully, and because that's something that happens on a regular, the way we create our meals and put them together, that can play a huge role on keeping our insulin response lower. And when that's lower, our energy expenditure is higher, meaning you're burning more calories naturally. Your ability to drop body fat is enhanced significantly. And here's the good news. As you go from insulin resistance, and we have it in 3 levels. We have high level of insulin resistance when we're coaching you, medium level, low level. The first goal of your high level is to get you down to medium. Then, as we get you from medium to low, the sensitivity, the cells start to work more efficiently. And as a result of that is happening, it's just a matter of time. Betsy will be fully insulin sensitive. Whereas at one point she was high level of insulin resistance, which means she can eat more foods, eat more things, get off of what would be considered healthy eating all the time, and indulge without going backward and gaining the weight back. That's the truth, baby. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. It was my first sharing of the year, insulin resistance. I consider an opening because it's something that I'm definitely going to be talking about again and again and again. And if you know of someone or is interested in finding out if you have insulin resistance and then being in a position to do something about it, then go to icora.com and we will connect you with a coach, and the rest will be history. And I'll be talking about you next year. Congratulations, Betsy. Love you, proud of you. And for all of you who are listening in and sharing and contributing and connecting with me in one way or another, or any of the coaches, we love you, we respect you, and we are looking forward to 2022 being one, if not your best and healthiest, most joyful and blissful year. If you have questions, my email is always in the comments. Reach out and I will reach back. Peace.